Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of So Simple with Miss Sarah. In this video, we're going to learn how to make these really awesome stuffed felt cookies. They're really fun and really easy. And today's project comes from this book, which is called I Love Crafts Sewing, and is written by Rita Story. So this has a lot of awesome fun crafts. If you're interested in checking out more of their projects, you can find this book at the library or online on Hoopla. Alright, let's get started.
Let's look at what supplies we'll need to make our stuffed felt cookie. One of the things you'll want is a template to use while you're cutting things out so everything's nice and even. You'll want a circular template, and you'll want one that's a little wavy, which will act as your frosting. Okay, so if you want to use the ones I'm using, in the video description I'll have some directions on how to find the template that I use in this video. Or you could draw your own circle and make your own frosting shape. You will also need some fabric scissors, or just regular scissors. I like to separate mine from paper and fabric, because if fabric scissors are used on paper too many times, they'll get really dull and they won't cut fabric as well. But if you just have one pair of scissors, that works too. You will need some thread. So just like our previous videos, we're going to use embroidery floss because it's going to be nice and decorative. And one of the things we're going to be doing with this thread this time is we're going to be making sprinkles with it. So we definitely want a nice decorative thread. I'm going to use green for my sprinkles. But you also are going to want a thread that matches the color of your frosting so that it blends in, because that part we don't want to get confused with sprinkles. And you'll want a brown thread to match your cookie. So a sprinkle thread, a thread that matches your frosting, and a thread that matches your cookie. So you'll need at least 3. You will also want a marker, so a washable marker, or a pencil, or chalk will work. And this is just to draw your pattern down on your fabric. You will want some fluff, whatever kind of fluff you have. If you have cotton balls, you can always use that as fluff. Just break them up so they're nice and soft and fluffy. You will want some felt, so you'll want at least 2 colors. So I'm going to use a tan or a brown as my base for my cookie. And then I chose to do pink for my frosting. So at least 2 colors of felt. And you'll also want an embroidery needle, which is a nice big large needle with a large eye. And optionally, you might want to use some pins. But pins are a little dangerous and so are needles, so make sure you have parents' permission before you use any of these objects. Alright, so the first thing we'll need to do is we're going to want to cut out all our templates, so let's do that first together. Okay. So I went ahead and I traced my circle on my brown. So I traced my circle just like that. And for the circle, so this is the base of your cookie, you're actually going to want 2. So you need to cut 2 circular shapes. And for your frosting, you'll just want to cut 1. It's a little hard to see. But I also traced 1 of my frosting. So this step is pretty simple. So just trace them, and then I usually cut the felt to a smaller size once I'm done tracing, so it's easier to cut them out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my 2 circles and 1 frosting. Alright, so now that we have all of our pieces cut out, we're ready to get started on sewing. So for the time being, you can put your 2 circles aside because we aren't going to work on those right now. Instead, we're going to work on our frosting. So we want to do all of our sprinkle stitches first. So in order to do that, we're going to need our needle. And we're going to need some thread. And we're going to want to thread our needle. So I went ahead and threaded my needle. So I just put my thread through the needle, through the eye. I match up my 2 ends. And then I tie a knot. And just to go over the knot tying one more time, I'll tie it with you. So you're probably going to want to tie your knot twice anyway, just because a double knot is a little stronger. So what you will do is you'll wrap it around your finger once. Pull it off. Now you've made a little loop. Put your little 2 ends through the loop. And then just pull that nice and tight. I'll do that one more time. My knots didn't line up, and that might happen. For knots don't line up, you might have to do it more than once. But there you go. Now you have a nice knot so that when you go to sew, your thread won't come flying out the other side, which you don't want. Kind of defeats the purpose. Okay, so now we're ready to start doing some stitching. So the type of stitching we're going to do is just like in our very first video. You can kind of see our flower back there. We're going to do running stitches to make our frosting, and there is no order. We can start wherever we want. We can do as many as you want because these are going to be your sprinkles. So always start from what side you decide is going to be your back. And pull. And you might get a little tangled if you made your thread as long as I did. But like I said, I'm only going to do one color thread for my frosting. I'm sorry. I'm only doing one color thread for my sprinkles. So I decided to do green because it kind of reminds me of a watermelon or strawberry. And I thought that was a nice summery feel. And you might have noticed there's somebody dangling below our frosting. And if you flip this over, that's our tail. So we can cut that out. Just don't cut the knot because then everything will fall apart. But if you cut the tail just nice and close to the end, you can throw that bit away. All right. So do those running stitches. You're just going to go up, pick a spot on your frosting, pull your needle up from the back, and then not too far away from it. You don't want to go all over here and make one giant sprinkle. Just keep it nice and close. Push it back in from the front. And then pull your thread all the way through. There you go. So I'm keeping mine kind of close together, but we don't really have to. We can go wherever we want. But if you do jump like from one end of the frosting to the other end of the frosting with your stitches, you might find that your thread gets pulled a little too tightly. And it can make your frosting kind of warp a bit when you do that. So kind of start in one area and work your way up and around, okay? And you can do it from different angles. They don't all have to be sideways. You can make one that goes up and down. This is a great way to practice a running stitch too, is doing something like this, because these stitches are just decoration. These are just sprinkles. So they can be big, they can be little, there can be lots of them, there can be just a few of them, whatever you want. So on my sample back there, you might see that I did rainbow sprinkles because I thought that'd be kind of fun. But this time around, I'm just going to do one color. But if you decide you would like to do more than one color, then all you have to do is tie off your stitches, then repeat the first step of threading your needle, and start again. And you can do that with as many colors as you would like. Okay? And if you don't know how to tie off your thread once you're done, just wait till this part ends, and then you can go back and try doing this with whatever colors you prefer. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to keep doing my sprinkle stitches all around my frosting until I feel like I've done enough. So you guys do with that too, okay? And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to finish the thread. Alright, so I think I decorated mine with as many sprinkles as I would like. So I'm going to show you what the back of this will look like, because it's going to look a little wild. So as you can see, from jumping all around and going across the fabric in different ways, you get a lot of crazy looking jump stitches, which is why we are attaching our sprinkles now instead of after, because otherwise you would see all those stitches on the back of your cookie, and that's just not that pretty, and you don't want to see all that, because your sprinkles should be pretty, so we're not going to do it that way. Alright. So if you are also finished and you're ready to finish your thread, this is what we're going to do. So you're going to take your scissors, you're going to carefully cut from the end of your needle. Alright, take your long piece of thread that you're left with, pull it apart so you have two strings, and just tie a knot. Nice and easy. Well, you might get confused as to which string is which, because my strings are kind of long. Okay. Go. So you can do any kind of knot, so you can tie it just like you're tying your shoes. And then be careful about pulling it too tight, because if you pull it too tight, your frosting might do something like that. And if you did that, that's okay. Just kind of tug it loose. That's another risk about jumping all right around in a crazy pattern. When you go to tie that final knot, it might get a little wonky, because it's going to tighten all those stitches one more time. That's why you kind of want to have a plan. And I'm going to tie it once more just to make sure that knot's nice and secure so my stitches do not fall out. And again, if you got too tight and it started to wonk, just pull your frosting loose. So you get it to look the way you want. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead, now that I finished tying my knot, and I'm going to cut all this extra string off. So nice and close to the end. It's be a little tricky when you're trying to do it for the camera. Nice and close to the end, but not actually cutting your knot or any of your other strings. Alright, put your scissors down, throw your trash away, put your scissors away, and there we go, we got some frosting. It's all sprinkled up and ready to be put on a cookie. Alright, so now we're ready to attach our frosting to our cookie base. So I've used a pin, and I'm just going to stick it through and bring it back through from the back. And that will just keep my frosting pinned in place so that it's not flying everywhere and it's a little bit more stable while I'm sewing. So what we're going to want to sew now is we're going to want to attach our frosting to our cookies. So this is just one of our cookie layers. We still have our second circle to the side, so that one we don't need yet. So in order to do this, we're going to need another thread. I don't want my thread to be the same color as my sprinkles. I want it to be the same color as my frosting because I kind of want this thread to blend in. If you want it to stand out, then use a color that's nice and contrasty and bright. But if you want it to just be kind of subtle and just be something that's attaching your frosting, then use a thread that's as close as you can get to the color you're using. In this case, I found this pink thread, and it's pretty similar to the pink that I have already on my frosting. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle one more time, just like we did earlier. So I got my needle all ready to go. It's all threaded. And we are going to do a same sort of stitch we did for our sprinkles. This time, though, we're just going to try to make sure it stays nice and even all around the edge or frosting. And that kind of stitch is called the running stitch. So pick a place to start on your frosting, and then bring it from the back, so through the brown cookie. Pull it all the way up. Then go a little bit ahead, and poke your needle back through from the front. And pull until it's all the way through. And there you go, you've done your first stitch. So now, just pick another spot, just a little bit ahead. Pull your thread through from the back. And then pick another spot, just another little bit ahead. And push your needle through from the front. It's nice and easy. One more time, from the back, push through. Going just a little ways ahead. And then sometimes your thread won't come through all the way through. You might have formed a knot, so just double check your back and make sure everything is nice and even. And then pick another spot just a little bit ahead of that last place your needles just came through and push through from the front. And you're just going to do this process until you get all the way around your frosting. So just travel across the edge of your frosting, going a little bit forward every time and making those stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do all my stitches for my frosting, and you guys should do that too, okay? And then we'll join back here and then we'll see what the next step is. And just like that, I finished going around my frosting. And now it is nice and secure, and if you check the back, you can see all those stitches, but don't worry, because in the end, that's all going to get covered by our second cookie layer. So you won't see any of that, and it'll look nice and finished. So but before we get to that next layer, we need to, once again, just tie off our thread. So, just a reminder, you're going to cut close to the end of your needle. Set your pin, your needle aside. Take your thread, split it into two pieces, and then just tie a knot. And do this part twice just so the knot's nice and tight and secure. So once you have finished putting your frosting on your first circle and you've tied it off in the back, we're ready to use that second circle we haven't used yet. So at this point we're going to put our 2 circles together. So that one circle is going to cover all the stitching that we've done previously. And in the end, this is going to be what we're going to use to stuff. So we're going to sew these 2 circles together. We're going to leave a little bit of an opening, and then we're going to fill the cookie so it's nice and poofy. So in order to stitch these, we're going to need to get our thread ready one more time. And I don't have a thread that really matches this tan color, so I'm just going to use a little bit of a darker thread. So I'm going to use a dark brown. So I'm going to go ahead and get my needle ready, so you guys do that too, okay? So my needle is ready to go. It's got its thread on it, and I went ahead and used my pin again just to hold my 2 pieces of fabric together so that while I'm stitching, it doesn't fall apart or doesn't shift and move and get a little uneven. So before we begin, we aren't actually going to do the running stitch this time around the edge. We're going to do something that is called an overstitch. And the reason we're not going to do the running stitch is because, as you can see, the running stitch leaves a lot of gaps. And since we are going to be stuffing our cookie, a stitch like this that has a lot of gaps that you can get through easily leads to a higher chance of our frosting or our stuffing coming free from our cookie, which isn't great. So instead we're going to do an overstitch. So I'm going to teach you guys that one. It's really easy. So one of the things that we want to do, just to get started, is we're going to want to go from the inner layer. So we're going to ignore this top layer. We're not going to put any stitches through that. Instead we're going to start our stitch just on our bottom layer. So just pushing through from the top of that layer. You're going to pull your needle through, and this way we can hide that knot. So I have to go through all the way, because this is going to be seen on the outside if we don't do this way. But that way when we start, we don't see that knot anymore, and it's going to get eaten inside our cookie, and we don't see any unseemly stitches. Now we're ready to get started for real though. So going from the back, this time we'll go through both of our circle layers. So you can go right next to that stitch from the back, push your needle up and through both layers so it comes out from the top. And we're going to give it a good tug and pull it all the way through. Mine's going to get a little tangled because I made my thread extra long. It might be easier to not make your thread quite so long, but if you did make it a little shorter, you may have to start over again. So you may have to do that first step of just hiding that knot inside and redoing your thread on your needle, which is why sometimes I just make it longer. So we've got our stitch now. It's out from the front so we can see it right there. So unlike our running stitch, we are not going to go from the front this time. We're going to go back to the back. And a little bit of ways over, we're going to stick our needle through, and we're going to pull it up and pull all our thread through. Remove any tangles if it gets a little tangled. Just keep tugging it through until you get all of it through. And like I said, if your thread's a little shorter than mine, it probably won't get tangled as much. And that is how you make your first overstitch. See how that's snug and it's holding our fabric edges together really nice and tight? Okay, so let's do another one. So once again, you see that our thread is now facing out here on the top of our fabric, but we do not want to go in from the top. We always want to come and bring our needle up from the bottom. With this stitch, you always come up from the bottom, never from the top. So go a little ways over again and bring your thread through. Pull it all the way through. And there you go. You got a second one. And again, we're right here. So from the bottom, remember, always from the bottom. Put your needle in and give it a good tug in case things get tangled. Unloosen your thread. Make sure that it doesn't make any unnecessary knots. And bring it all the way through. And there you go, you did another one. So we'll do a few more together. So ready? Up from the bottom. Just a little ways past that last one. And pull everything through. So, oops, I got a knot. See, I went too fast. Just undo the knot. And there. So, if we tried to open that up from that spot where we've sewn, it's really tight and secure right there. So, well, not so much on that end, but from the places where we have a little bit of a chain of stitches, it's nice, tight, and secure so our stuffing will not fall out of our cookie in the end, which is what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go do my stitches, my overstitch, all the way around my cookie, but I'm not going to go all the way back to the beginning. We're going to leave a gap. So go maybe about this far. So go to about this point. Because you want to have enough of an opening that you can still put all your stuffing inside. And if you still need a little bit more help with the overstitch, just rewind, watch that part again to see how you do it. And just remember, no matter what, you always bring your needle up from the back, never from the front. Because otherwise it's not going to be an overstitch. It'll just turn into a running stitch. And we don't want that. So always from the back. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish sewing mine. So you guys go ahead and try to sew yours too. So I'm going to stop right there because I've just about made it back to the beginning. So at this point, we're going to put our needles down. We're not going to tie off our thread. And we're going to grab our mountain of stuffing. So I actually have quite a bit of stuffing. But if you don't have stuffing, like this is the stuff that you would find inside of a stuffed animal. If you don't have something like this, then cotton balls that you break up would work. You just might need more of them. But if you do have this stuff will work pretty well. Or if you have an old toy that's no longer being used and you want to use it for stuffing, it's a great way to recycle. Alright, so start with a small piece. And just be mindful of where your needle is because it could hurt if you poke yourself with it. And then open up your cookie and just stuff it full. And you can make it as stuffed of a cookie as you'd like. So you can put a lot of stuffing inside, make it nice and plump. Or you can put just a little bit of stuffing inside, whatever you prefer. And if you're having a hard time getting to the end of your cookie, oh, and if you still have a pin in, you might want to take your pin out at this point. And just put it aside safely. Put it over there. But like I said, if you're having a hard time getting to the end, a pencil, something with a nice soft eraser, you can use that to help push all your stuffing through so that it gets to the other side where your fingers might have a harder time reaching. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill my cookie. So I'm pretty happy. I think I've stuffed my cookie enough. So I'm going to go back and I want you guys to do this as well if you are finished stuffing your cookie. And we're going to finish doing those over stitches. So remember, once again, we always come from the back. So even if you forgot, just always remember, come do it from the back, from the back, from the back. You might want to use your fingers here just to help hold that part closed. And just keep bringing your stitches. Just be very cautious of where your fingers are because you do not want to poke yourself with a needle. It's not a fun experience. And I think I'll do one more, just to finish it off. Perfect. Okay, so at this point, I've made it all the way around. My cookie's nice and stuffed. It's time to cut our thread free from our needle. And we're going to want to tie this off. So go ahead and tie off your thread. And remember, just any kind of knot works here. So anything that you know how to do. Nice and simple. You don't have to make it too fancy. And if you have like a lot of thread left over like I do, you don't need that much to tie a knot. You can go ahead and shorten that so it's something a little bit more manageable. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this into a knot. Just make sure you leave enough to tie. If you make it too short, it can be really tricky to tie these knots. Alright, really tight, tight. And tie it tight. So I do 2 just to make sure nothing falls apart. And then cutting really close to that knot, but not so close you cut anything important. Just cut it free. put the excess in the trash. I still have my fluff out, so I'm going to put that away. And there you have it. You did it. And just like that, we are done. So now I have 2 cookies. So these are really fun and they're easy to make. So you can make a bunch of these. You can make them for friends as a gift. You can make them for a play set. So you can pretend you have a little bakery with your cookies. Maybe make a dozen. And you can do different things with your decoration. So this time around, I wanted to do like a strawberry watermelon theme. My first one, I wanted to do a rainbow. Maybe you can make a face with your stitches. Or if you're not so confident with your stitching yet, you can always cut out pieces of felt and draw a face and glue those pieces on. Or you could just leave them as fun cookies. Whatever you want to do. So I hope you had fun. And I hope you try this out at home. If you do try to make a cookie, definitely let us know. So in the description is a hashtag you can use to share on social medias like Twitter or Instagram. Just make sure you have parents' permission before posting anything online. All right, see you next time.